Listen, life's all about leveling up. Whether you're handling business on the field or kicking it in your zone, you like to celebrate with cigars that match the moment. That's why you should link up with Famous Cigars to bring you a wild deal. Right now, you can grab 8 premium cigars for just $8. You heard that right. 8 top-rated cigars at $1 a stick. Top quality brands like Oliva, Romeo y Julieta, and Davidoff. Handpicked just for you and worth over $80. Hit up famouscigars.com/cam and lock in this exclusive deal. While you're there, check out their insane selection of premium cigars, all shipped fresh and fast from their massive 20,000 square foot humidor. That's half a football field. Famous Cigars has been in the game since 1939 and still family owned. So celebrate every win with the folks at Famous. 8 cigars for $8. famouscigars.com/cam.
The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. My name is Mike, here with Sam. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing great. Back again after a slight delay. Sorry for that, folks. But we were waiting, I think, just to have more preseason games under our belt that we could talk about.
Yep.
These Suns are 3-1 in the preseason now, having just defeated Portland their past 2 games, which came like 3 or 4 days apart. 1 game left in the preseason. I guess we'll cover that one probably later this week on our Patreon episode. But for now, I don't know. Just time to run through these guys. How are we going to do it today? What do you want to do?
I think, one thing I'll say to preface everything that we're talking about now is the way that the preseason sort of rolled out was that our stars, not all 3 of them, but at least 2 of them, only played against Detroit and Portland twice. There was the Denver game where Denver played most of their starters against the Suns, basically their bench. And then I think what's difficult in analyzing this preseason, because I'm very excited, first of all, extremely excited, and I think we have a lot of really fun things to talk about. But it sure would have been nice if the Suns played their main guys against a better team than maybe 2 of the worst 5 teams in this coming season who didn't even necessarily play all of their players in the preseason games. That part kind of sucked.
Well,
I think
in that first Portland game, though,
yeah,
they were trying. I mean, they
were trying.
They played the Max man, DeAndre Ayton.
They did.
Jeremy Grant, Anthony
another
Simons.
almost Max guy. Yeah,
yeah. Those guys didn't play in the second game, but they played in the first game.
That's true. And they had Malcolm Brogdon on that team.
True. Who I keep forgetting is on that team. That's a good point.
Yeah, Robert Williams too hasn't played yet. Team is actually kind of interesting with talented guys that don't have like a North Star in any way. But yeah, I think the best way to talk about it, because this is really the first time on this feed that we're going to talk about preseason in general. We had a brief conversation with Max on our over-under episode, but I think there's just so much to talk about. I think the easiest way to do it will be to talk about each player individually. This might take us a while. I haven't really thought out.
Sure.
Just from what we've seen, there's 17 guys on the roster right now, but we can talk about each one at least a little bit, maybe more for some than others, obviously. And then maybe through that conversation, we can talk about who should start, who should be cut, and how we think it'll look in this coming season.
Yeah, so who should be the 5th starter and who should be cut are obviously the 2 questions at the forefront, just in terms of, how the transactions are going to land, what the roster is going to look like. But we'll try and have a brief conversation about everyone here so that everyone, I don't know, we can just kind of throw out our takes, I guess, based on what we've seen from each guy. I guess I'm definitely going to throw out some stats. Like, I have the stat page up here just in case, but I will emphasize, like, this early on, given the level of competition and given the number of games played, it really is more about process over results, even though the results have been literally very good. The Suns are 3-1, and most of these guys, especially the guys who are going to be in the starting lineup, have awesome plus minuses, and we can quote how awesome the stats are for Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, etc. But even then, it's more about process right now. It's more about what we're seeing, the ways in which they're scoring, the ways in which they're defending, all that. So I'm ready to get into it.
There are stats that we can learn from, and then there are stats that are meaningless in preseason. Team stats are meaningless in preseason because 17 guys played on the Suns, and that's just not going to be the case in the regular season.
I mean, there are a couple of stats that are like Bulls plus minus, which I threw out on Twitter a couple of days ago, and got that was before the second Portland game, and has since gotten even worse.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he plays with other bad players too. Like
it's a team stat, but in some ways, but it's also he's the worst of all of, and it's funny. That's all I mean, like it's funny.
A player like Keita Bates-Diop has mostly played with the end of the bench guys too, and still has a much better one. So yeah, there is a lot to. Let's talk about Devin Booker. Let's just get into the fun stuff first.
Sure.
Because Devin Booker, I think, has been remarkable in preseason so far, and I'm watching preseason and I'm seeing how he's been playing, which, by the way, 10.8 3-pointers attempted per 36 minutes is what we're up to. 10.8 3-pointers attempted per 36 minutes, which is a rate. Obviously, you have to sort of say, is this going to scale? But to me, it's clear that he's intent on launching threes. Now, whether or not that sustains itself over the course of an entire season remains to be seen. But the rate at which he's shooting threes is the highest rate we've ever seen. It's close to somebody like Damian Lillard or Steph Curry. It's completely new from what we've seen from Devin Booker. And by the way, 56% of those have gone in. So he's shooting an insane percentage so far in preseason. And everything is on the money for him. He's making the right reads. He's making the right plays off the dribble. He's shooting an amazing percentage just overall. And he looks, as I'm watching preseason, I'm thinking about that bet I put on MVP for Devin Booker that we talked about in our last Patreon episode. $5 on plus 2,200, which, by the way, has not changed. I checked this morning. It's still plus 2,200, which obviously is still a long shot, but like, if he plays anywhere close to how he played in preseason, he's at a level that we have never seen him play so far. Yeah,
and it's funny, he's on a heater, obviously, in general, but yesterday, as he once again had 17 points in the first quarter and was launching these threes, I think he was 4 for 4 from deep in the first quarter, and the third or fourth one goes in, and I'm thinking to myself, I am maybe an idiot for taking the under on his points per game this season that we did last week with Max, because I did that based on this general logic of spreading it around between the three stars. But man, we haven't seen him like this before. We really haven't. For, again, 4-game sample size and whatnot, but the fact that about half of his field goal attempts right now are coming from that distance is crazy. And I think we've always said that the pull-up three has been the elusive, last skill to unlock for Book, where he's had some seasons that have been better than others. He's had pretty tough seasons in the past where he shoots 30-31% on his pull-up three, and then he's had other pretty good seasons where he shoots around 35 or 36.
Which are the last few. He's had a good percentage for the last few seasons.
Yeah, he's still gone up and down. I think this past season he dipped back down to maybe 32, 33 again, but it's more so the fact that we haven't seen consistent volume from him ever. And I think consistent volume being he shoots a lot of them, but consistent volume being Dame volume, Steph volume.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that just has to do with the way the Suns ran their offense with Chris Paul as the point guard. There wasn't that opportunity for him to seize. And watching
especially
him the past
in transition, because a lot of them have come in transition.
He just has. I don't know if that's his goal for this season. If he's just telling himself that he's just gonna gun it down the floor 6 or 7 seconds into the shot clock and take that shot consistently. If he's hitting it at 35% clip or better, then there is a clear pathway to 30 points per game. There is a clear pathway, even as you've mentioned, to an MVP candidacy for sure.
And it's not, to me, there's the transition threes, right? So he's got this little chicken wing thing that he did really well in the playoffs, where if somebody's too close to him, they'll call a foul if you extend your arm. But if you just kind of use your elbow to push off on guys, they don't call that a foul, and you can create space just by, it's a push off, but it's a legal push off. And he's got that down really well. But in the past, he's done that from mid-range, right? He'll get beyond the three-point line, he'll push off of a guy, and then based on that, he'll shoot a mid-range shot. But extending those mid-range shots out to the three-point line and still being capable of shooting those mid-range shots when they're necessary, it just makes him a complete threat from everywhere in a way that we've never seen. And it's, like you said, it's up to the efficiency. But to me, and this is Frank Vogel talked about how he's really on Devin Booker about shooting those. He's taking the credit for that so far, which I think is obvious, because if there's any indication that Monty Williams is gone, just from watching, it's that he's shooting 10.8 3-point attempts per 36 minutes so far, because that had never happened with Monty Williams before. And it's clear that Frank Vogel is bringing a different offensive identity. You can give credit to Frank if you want, you can give credit to Kevin Young if you want, but it doesn't matter, because it's not Monty, and it's clear that it's not Monty. And like you said, it's not Chris Paul either. It's both of them. Mm-hmm. But it's a difference in how Devin Booker is playing too. There's the transition threes, and there's if they're switching on picks when he's on the ball, and the big backs up to be in that drop defense, because Devin Booker usually drives on those. He's just shooting now. And that's different. He didn't do that every time before.
Yeah, we probably also should give a little tiny bit of the credit, and not most of it, but just a tiny bit, to the joint duo of Yusuf Nurkic and Drew Eubanks as well.
That's a good point. It's a good point.
The consistent, hitting the right consistent screening angles, and just literally, I mean, we've talked about it with Nurk before. I do think he shed some weight from where he was, but he still probably has 20 pounds on DeAndre Ayton. That little bit of space can make a huge difference for him as well.
We'll get more into Devin Booker as the season goes, but I think this is... It's really, he's the story so far in watching this. But let's talk about Kevin Durant. And I'll tell you this. I'm watching Kevin Durant in preseason, and part of me is thinking, is something wrong with Kevin Durant? Is he all right? Is he playing okay? And then I look at his stats, and he's literally averaging 50 exactly, 40 exactly, and 91 from the free throw line. So 50, 40, 91 so far in the preseason. And I'm thinking, is he okay?
Yeah.
He's fine. He's doing great.
He also has he has 11 assists to 2 turnovers.
Yeah.
And scores every time he touches the ball.
His per 36 is 34.6 points per 36 and 8.1 assists. Like he was so good passing in the last game, the second Portland game, where you can see how this offense is just going to it's already insane, and it's just going to get better and better and better as these guys get used to playing with each other. And Kevin Durant is such a huge hub for that. But I think what has been different for me in seeing how teams have played this preseason is when we last saw Kevin Durant on the Suns, every single time he touched the ball, they were doubling him. And already in preseason, that's just not happening. And I don't know if there's going to be teams that still continue to do that on a regular basis, but the amount of threats that are around Kevin Durant now, not just Devin Booker and Bradley Beal, but all the shooting, Yusuf Nurkic with his passing or cutting to the rim. It's just, I don't know how they're going to double him. And if they do, the Suns are going to get an open 3 out of that probably pretty consistently.
I mean, I think if I was an opposing coach and I was challenged with guarding the Suns, first of all, you kind of throw your hands up because it's an impossible task to begin with based on what we're seeing right now. But I would double Kevin Durant depending on the scheme that I had, depending on the players. You bet on him being the least talented playmaker of the big 3 and then force the other guys to hit their shots. We haven't seen it yet in preseason, but it's coming. Eventually teams are going to challenge the Suns in that way. I have full faith that he'll make the right reads in those situations. But I do think he's benefited a little bit from the preseason looks in that it feels like Book is the guy who's getting doubled, or even Beal is the guy who's seeing a second man. And KD, more often than not, is kind of chilling in the corner. And maybe he catches it on the weak side or after a couple of swings, gets to attack a gap and sort of just finish in a one-on-one situation where he's not even seeing the defense, right? He's just floating it up over a single defender out from anywhere from, it could be literally right at the rim, it could be out to 10 or 12 feet. He likes going left with that little jumper from around the 10, 12 foot range. So the defense that KD's seeing so far in preseason is just, you don't have a chance to stop him with that.
Exactly.
You do not have a chance. And that is always going to be a good, efficient shot, good, efficient offense for Kevin Durant.
The second Portland game, I think, was the closest, and this still had guys out. Eric Gordon still didn't play. Yusuf Nurkic still didn't play. But I think it's the closest we've seen to what this team is going to look like as far as regular rotations in the regular season, in that the game started with just this barrage of points by Devin Booker, just completely owning the Trailblazers. And then he goes out, and now all of a sudden we have minutes with Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant in it. And I think you're right. With KD, what's been fascinating with how he's played is that he is the finisher in these plays. Like, he's the guy, he's the Amare, if you want to make a comparison to Suns teams of the past. But he still finds ways to get so many assists out of that because he's just this basketball genius that makes these really great passes off of closeouts. And that's what a luxury to not have to start the play with Kevin Durant, but still have the type of offense where he can create for himself and others off the catch. And he's really good at that. And in fact, if we had to compare it to the postseason last season, I would say that that's more his better suited role than starting the play with him. But if you can start the play with him against benches, what a luxury that is too. Mm-hmm. You know, you can do both of those things. And this is an example. I think that second Portland game was such a great example of how excited I am for the regular season, because watching what Devin Booker was, there's a great tweet that said, "Boy, is it nice having Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, and prime Michael Jordan on the team all at once," because that's what it felt like watching Booker. But then he comes out, and even last season when he came out of the game, everything fell apart offensively because Chris Paul wasn't quite what he was. Mikal Bridges was hurt. DeAndre Ayton can't create. And it's just such a different situation now. And I think that's a good way to transition to Bradley Beal, because we saw in a stretch in that second Portland game more, I think, of what Bradley Beal can give you as a guy who starts off the ball but then can still create once he gets the ball. We're starting to see it click a little bit with Bradley Beal so far. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, just the rim pressure has been obvious. I think that was the big thing that we keyed in on with Beal on the external development episode. The highlight that you posted that went like semi-viral last night, right? Which was him breaking down. Well, he gets the steal first, so that's a whole other part of the equation, is that Bradley Beal is locked in. He's playing defense. That's important. But then he comes back down on the other end, hits who was guarding him? Ryan Rupert or something?
I think so. Yeah.
Some
I don't
Blazers.
know. These Portland guys, I don't know.
Yeah, a rookie, I think. Hits him with the hezzy move, gets right by him. Like, could have. This was a real thing that stood out to me, because I was thinking if that's Chris Paul and the hezzy works, he's then still pulling up for the jumper because he's at about, the free throw line extended around 16, 17 foot out. But no, makes the decision. After he's got the defender kind of behind him in the play, he's going to keep going, goes all the way to the rim, drags another defender into the play, and then there's a little dump-off opportunity for Chimezie Metu, who finishes. Yeah, wraparound pass to Chimezie Metu at the rim. By the way, just spoiler alert, can't wait until we get to the Chimezie Metu portion of this pod. I think I teased that on social media as well. Love that guy. But yeah, like, he is getting to. I mean, he also, just the fact he has more free throws than either of the other two guys so far. What does that say?
Free throw attempts per 36 minutes. I know I'm using per 36 minute stats. We don't have a full game played for any of these guys, and not to say that any of these stats are going to actually scale to when they actually play their 33 minutes or whatever they end up playing per game. But 14.8 free throw attempts per 36 for Bradley Beal in the two games that he's played so far.
It's funny,
they can't stop fouling him because he doesn't have the best defenders on him anymore. He's going at other guys, worse defenders, and they can't stop fouling him.
It's funny that at a time where we just talked about how Book is really leaning into his pull-up three.
Yeah.
I mean, he's really leaning into it. Beal has decided to go entirely in the opposite direction here. He is 99% foot on the gas pedal. He's going to get to the rim right now. And I think eventually what's most likely to happen is that both of these guys even out a little bit. Book's going to start attacking more than we saw from him in preseason, and Beal's going to start shooting more pull-up threes than we saw from him in preseason, where he basically hasn't taken any. But just for right now, they're two rapidly or just the major contrast between those two guys, and then having KD in the middle who kind of just does everything, makes it a really well-balanced attack.
It's not just pull-up threes that Beal hasn't shot much of. He hasn't shot much threes, period. 2.3 per 36. It's very little three-point attempts at all in the games that he's played so far. And I think, you say they made the choice to do that, and I think that's probably true, but I would guess that this is by design. Booker is shooting more because Bradley Beal is shooting less. He's trying to get to the rim. They're using him off the ball. They're running him off screens and handoffs with going downhill towards the rim, kind of like the way the Suns used to use Kelly Oubre. And he's creating off of that. He can get guys in mid-range. He can ISO them if they switch. He can pass, like we saw in some of his assists that he's made. And I think it's still a bit of a learning curve for Bradley Beal more than everyone else. And throughout that, he's still been really great so far.
It's weird because, I know we've rejected kind of unilaterally the Brooklyn comparison when we think about these three guys versus KD, Kyrie, and Harden before, because of the way they move off the ball. I can't think of a good comparison, though, like a good one-to-one comparison of this big three and another big three. One thing that I forget who this was, but some people threw out the comparison maybe back in the offseason, just talking about the Suns of like, oh, Beal is kind of like when the Celtics, went out and got their Ray Allen acquisition back in like the run up to 2008, right? Thinking that it was going to be like, a player who had been forced into a role, if you think about Ray Allen back in the day, where he was the number one on a pretty mediocre Sonics team, but like historically was working at his best off the ball, and the Celtics obviously were able to foster him back into that role of being the spot-up shooter who just takes a ton of threes. Well, Beal is obviously not going to be that. He's not going to be the Ray Allen who's just hanging out in the corner. And like, obviously he could shoot, 42, 43% on those easy catch and shoot threes, just like hanging out. But he's not going to be just like, I don't know, starting plays in the corner and then just working off pin downs and like going for threes that way, right? Like he is the main pressure point who kind of drives the offense, and then it's other guys who are working off of him. So it's just, given that he's probably the third option of the three, I'm not sure I've ever seen a dynamic that works exactly like this one with these three guys. It just feels like something new.
I keep saying this, but the extent to which this Suns team is unlike anything we've ever seen, at least in modern basketball, is sort of undercovered or under talked about. It's just it's so different. I don't know what to even compare it to. To your point, you can try to make comparisons to Brooklyn, and it's just not accurate because, well, first of all, there's very few players like James Harden. In fact, I would say there's only one player like James Harden, and that's Luka, and none of these players are anything like him. So, it's hard to make that comparison. Then you look at other big threes from the past, and it just doesn't stack up. You got the LeBron ones, and there's no LeBron on this team. The Warriors, that might be the closest comparison you could make, but, Bradley Beal's not Klay Thompson or Draymond Green.
Yeah, and who is Draymond Green in this comparison is the other difficult thing with the Warriors.
I mean, the team with KD was unfair. I mean, that's a big four.
It just kind of doesn't work.
It's unique. Yeah. It's completely unique. Bradley Beal, I think, will come into his own when he has a little bit more time without Devin Booker on the floor, when we're allowing him to sort of be that backup point guard, if you will. And I think they're gonna absolutely destroy defenses in those minutes. And throughout the season, I have a feeling I'm going to be checking the Bradley Beal minus Devin Booker minutes and seeing what that looks like, because I'm really curious. We have a lot of places we can go next.
Yep, I think.
Who do you want to talk about next?
Let's just keep it rolling with Nurk, because I think most people think of him as kind of number 4.
The other guaranteed starter.
The other guaranteed starter. So I think and then we can open up the first big question, which is, okay, who's next after that? But let's go to Nurkic.
I think the story with Nurkic, since the last time we talked on this podcast, was that dominant half he had against DeAndre Ayton, right?
Dominant Nurkic. Let's go. It's happening. He was
unbelievable, man. He was so good.
He was.
I'm like, of all expectations I had, they played him 21 minutes, by the way. It's not like he's going to play 21 minutes a half regularly.
Vogel wanted to make a statement.
I think he did too.
He wanted him to dominate the game with force a little bit, and he did.
I think Nurkic it wasn't just playing against the former Suns center, which I think mattered to Nurkic. It was also playing against his former team that he played on for a long time. And so I think he wanted to have a great game. He was very focused. And, 17 points, 5 assists, 8 rebounds, I think was his stats at the end of the half. And he looked unbelievable. I think that type of scoring performance is the type of thing that we'll get from Nurkic once every 10 games or so. Like, that's not going to happen regularly.
Yeah.
But you can see how the assists will so easily rack up for him on this team, being that he's just a versatile passer from that top of the key where players tend to play off of centers. So there's a little bit more space to make those reads. And look, defensively, I think the first game we saw against Detroit, they played him exclusively in a deep drop. And it wasn't great. I think he had trouble keeping up a little bit. The next 2 games, they played him much higher up, and they were playing him, often at the level of the screen. They do this thing that I think at some point I'm going to have to watch some film on this to explain it. But they do this sort of switch and peel thing that's like a famous Vogel thing where it's kind of like at the level of the screen where they sort of hedge out and the big. It's what Jokic does too, where the big will kind of push up on the ball handler and then peel back onto the roller so that they make the pass as difficult as possible and they can cover both guys. And that worked pretty well. Like, I thought Nurkic's defense in the other 2 games, besides that first one, was pretty good, and you could see the path to a good defense with Nurkic on the floor. At least I thought. What did you think?
Was that the first Portland game? Or was
first
it the
Portland
Denver
game.
Okay.
And the Denver game, I thought. They did it in both of those.
Okay.
They just didn't do it in Detroit. Detroit, he was in a deep drop.
Yeah, well, I just remembered the scheme getting more aggressive, frankly, from those games. And
right.
I don't know, do I remember really off the top of my head a lot of impact plays that he made in those games? No. But yeah, I thought there was something to be said for the aggressiveness of the scheme. I think as we go to talk about some of the other centers here, that's important to talk about too, because maybe contrasting what we thought a few weeks ago, like it's pretty clear to me now Vogel's scheme is not just going to be let's play all our centers in deep drop. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot more complicated than that, and a lot more aggressive in some instances. So yeah, I thought he was decent.
There was this end of the play situation, end of the quarter situation where Portland was calling up Yusuf Nurkic's man to try to force the switch as well. I think Steven posted a clip of that. Somebody did. I think it was Steven. Maybe it was, I don't know, maybe it was Steve from the Dunkard spot as well. But they call up Nurkic's man to set the screen for Simons or whoever was trying to isolate against Nurkic, and the Suns just had another player run up so that they couldn't switch, and there was this immediate scram switch from Nurkic's man so that they couldn't isolate Nurkic's man, and then Nurkic just sort of zoned up until he could find his man, and they just didn't let Nurkic be attacked on the switch. I think there's just some level of creativeness defensively that was missing previously with Monty Williams. That kind of thing is an example. Playing up at the higher level is an example. I mean, Ayton was bad at it, so I understand why they didn't do it with Ayton. But playing at the level of the screen is an example of that. The Suns, this is just, since this is sort of going into a conversation about defense as well, they seem to be, when teams are trying to switch and isolate, they're just immediately doubling, and they're just forcing guys to get rid of the ball instead of giving them any time to isolate, kind of throwing off their rhythm in isolations, which is what the Lakers did in the past as well when Vogel was coaching them. So I think that's not a surprise. And I'm just really excited to have a coach in Frank Vogel who is creative defensively in the way that he has been. And I think what we're going to get to see as the season progresses and these guys are playing together more minutes is a much more cohesive defense. And after watching this is one of the things that I wish that we would have gotten to see. Like, I wish one of the games that the Stars played in was the Nuggets game and not the Portland games.
Well, yeah.
And we would have gotten to see a little bit more of what their defense could look like. But on Nurkic too, 11 free throw attempts per 36 minutes for him. So he's shooting an insanely high free throw rate, which mattered against the Nuggets because Jokic got in foul trouble pretty quick. But also, it's just so different from what we're used to. Obviously, DeAndre Ayton avoided contact like the plague. Yusuf Nurkic is not as skilled, anywhere close to as skilled in scoring near the basket as DeAndre Ayton is. So he kind of needs that contact. Like, it's actually necessary for him in order to be effective around the rim. So he's looking for it. He's actively searching it out. And I thought that is something that's going to be really valuable for us.
He's not as skilled maybe as, I don't know. Is it that he's not as skilled? He's
Scoring.
He's not as talented naturally as a finisher.
He's more skilled offensively.
He has a bigger back.
Dribbling, passing, post moves.
But
Ayton was just so good at finishing. So.
Sure. I mean, Ayton had one or two moves that, were just an automatic 75%, nothing you can do about it. But then he wasted so much of that potential because he would just take the same 15, 16-foot mid-range over and over again. And we haven't seen that from Nurkic once. He's going to keep his dribble alive, or he's going to make the right read, a pass to someone else out on the perimeter, or he's going to do an up and under or pump fake or whatever he can do to get closer to the basket. He's not going to settle for bad offense, even if his percentages at the rim aren't quite what Ayton's are. It's going to balance out because of the frequencies at which he's taking shots from certain spots on the floor. So, I mean, his offense has been really good through 3 games, or he's only played 3 games so far.
Yep. And, the defense, like I said, a little bit shakier, a little bit up and down, but at times really good. And I think there's a pathway for the Suns to have a pretty good defense with him on the floor. One other quick note on him, relatively high turnover rate in preseason, and I think some of that has been just passing to cutters who didn't know he could make that pass, right? And so there was no cutter there, and now it's dribbling out of bounds or into the hands of another player. And I think his turnovers will go down as they gain more chemistry. As guys who make sort of audacious passes, you have to get used to it. I mean, we saw it with Steve Nash all the time. New guys would get to the Suns and they just weren't ready for these insane passes. They would just bounce off their face when Steve Nash was passing to them around some insane angles. And I think someone like Nurkic, if you haven't played with a center who makes great passes, I think people are going to get more used to that. Just quickly, since we were talking about DeAndre, and I just want to say that I think people who have assumed that DeAndre Ayton will be better offensively without point guards like Chris Paul are going to learn something about him this season. I think that he was in a much better place on the Suns than a lot of people who are analyzing his game realized. And assuming that he's somehow going to be better without people who could actively get him the ball in the right places over and over and over again, it's just going to be tough for him. I almost feel bad for him that he doesn't have the right kind of point guards, but he seems to be happy, and I hope he plays well. I'm glad that he doesn't have to be a topic every podcast for this podcast. So.
Not for this podcast. Maybe for some Portland podcasts, but that's their problem now. Who's the fifth starter, Mike?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay, let me say this. I am happy to say that I don't care that much now.
Okay. What
I mean by that is there are good options, Like Josh Okogie, it worked. I think it worked really well.
You're no longer a Josh Okogie
I'm not
hater.
completely against it. Yeah, okay. I'm not excited by it in the playoffs, but I think that they could develop in a way that I think the coaching is more creative in a way that I think makes it less of a problem. Grayson Allen, who started in this last game, they sat Josh Okogie, and I think they're sitting guys, by the way, to get more time with other guys on the court. That's the only reason they're sitting guys in preseason. But Grayson Allen starts. The defense still looks pretty good. Grayson Allen fights. Sure. He fights really hard. His three-point shooting is much better. The offense looks insane when he's on the floor. I don't think they're gonna start. I honestly think there's a best case for Josh Okogie at this point. Having Grayson Allen and Eric Gordon off the bench is just such a weapon, and I understand why the Suns would want those guys coming off the bench.
I think Okogie was the first guy to be given the spot out of training camp for a reason, and he's played probably the most minutes with the big three to this point, even given Grayson Allen starting yesterday. That being said, I'll make a concession to you in that, I've always liked Grayson Allen as a basketball player, but as someone whose dog in this fight was Josh Okogie from the beginning, Grayson was awesome yesterday. I mean, he was better than awesome. He was spectacular. And I don't know what the hell. I guess it's like this is just a Chauncey Billups thing. You just kind of have to write it off as a Chauncey Billups thing. But the zone that they came out in the second game yesterday, they played some zone in the first game too, but especially in the second game, the amount of fluidity that Grayson plays with as your fifth guy on offense, you just have no chance. If you're going to try and play defense against that with a zone, and you have Grayson Allen being the fifth guy who catches and gets to attack a gap, can either finish at the rim, can obviously shoot if he's open, or can pass it off to the next person, you have no chance.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what Chauncey was thinking, but there was no chance with Grayson Allen as the fifth guy in that lineup. And yeah, I mean, he's shooting 59% from the field, 43% from deep here.
Crazy.
And
a lot of self-created shots at the rim, for Grayson Allen. Like, he's been one of the better scorers on the team so far. And, has far exceeded my expectations for him in preseason. And if he carries that level of effort and that level of consistency, which we've only been 3 games for him as well, into the regular season, I think that the Suns did a good job acquiring someone like Grayson Allen in that trade, being that he appears to be top 7 guy on this team rotation-wise so far for the Suns, and I don't think anyone can deny that. But having said that, there is something about Josh Okogie, just the things he does, in the ways that he makes plays, whether it be deflections or I think the big one is rebounds, that other guys in the starting lineup don't. Like, Booker has like 2 rebounds per 36 at this point, maybe less. Oh no, let's see, 2 exactly per 36 at this point. He's just out there on the break and he's running. Josh Okogie is going to fight for those rebounds, and there is something to that in having a guy that makes the types of plays that the other 4 guys don't. He's going to dive on the floor. And you can make a case, by the way, Jordan Goodwin does those things as well, and maybe at some point they'll give that a try.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I definitely don't think they're going to start the season with that, which is why I'm going to save Goodwin for a little bit later when we get to him. But rebounding is one of the weaknesses of this team. It's one of the only, other than can they stay healthy, which, as we've pointed out before, isn't really analysis. Rebounding is one of their only statistical weaknesses, and we know it because Book is okay. KD, for his size, is a pretty bad rebounder. I mean, I guess if your power forward grabs 6 or 7 rebounds, fine, whatever, but for his size, he should be better. Beal, for his size, should be better. Nurkic is pretty good. He's good. But to only have one good rebounder at their position in a starting 5 is kind of a problem, to your point. So exactly. I think that's why we were considering, in the first place, Okogie. Or maybe you went with a guy with more length, like we were originally thinking, Keita Bates-Diop or whatever. But now it's obviously not going to be Keita Bates-Diop.
He's out of the conversation.
He's out of the conversation.
Right?
We'll get to him. We'll get to him later too. It's got to be Okogie or Grayson Allen. Ultimately, I think they're going to start with Okogie, but Grayson Allen exceeded every expectation I had for him, I already liked him.
Yeah, and I think we talked about how he's a great fit. It's all of the other stuff that comes with him that makes it harder to root for him, but it's funny how basketball works. They can win you over so fast. But I think the advantage of starting with Josh Okogie is that you could just pull him really fast if it's not working and just put Grayson Allen in. Now, when it comes to the playoffs, they might end up starting with Grayson Allen depending on the matchups and just try and go with like lights out offense and just crazy firing threes. But yeah, I think there's a lot of logic to starting Josh Okogie, and I'm not as against it as I was previously. And after seeing the way the offense looks, and I'll say this too. I think Nurkic made it a little different too, because Nurkic can shoot threes. Now, whether or not that's going to be a major threat for him remains to be seen. But there's a way to create space that's not just threes. It's also making the right reads to cutters, and Okogie's a good cutter. So I think switching from Ayton to Nurkic, I think makes Okogie work even better in that there's just 4 kind of really high level IQ basketball players, and then Josh Okogie, who's not
then a wild card, a wrecking
ball.
He's
not a low IQ player, but like his skill set is nowhere near those other guys, so you kind of have to surround him by really smart passers and good shooters, and then Okogie can be optimized, and I think you probably optimize him the best with the starters. And Grayson Allen, and the combination of Grayson Allen, Eric Gordon, and then they're going to share minutes with Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant, probably in the second quarter and at the beginning of the fourth quarter. That's
And,
pretty amazing, man.
Yeah, well, and Jordan Goodwin has to maybe find a way to muscle his way in there too. This is where it's going to get really complicated for someone is out. Like if you're constructing a general 10-man rotation, someone is on the outside looking in right now, and I don't know who that is. But there are a lot of guys making compelling cases.
I know, because Yuta, we'll get to Yuta in a second. I want to cover Eric Gordon first, but like you got to play Yuta. He was really good.
You got to play a lot of these guys. It's kind of how I feel about them right now. So, yeah. All right,
James
let's keep
Jones, a round of applause so far. I mean, we'll see how the season goes. But
he fucking killed it.
He really did, man.
Eric Gordon, that's where you want to go next?
Dude, Eric Gordon is so good. In the game where Bradley Beal sat, it was like, how did we do this? How did we get... I know this is like prime optimism season content here, but like, my God, having Eric Gordon on a minimum contract is incredible. It's just such a huge steal. I think what he did in Houston, I think we talked about it previously, was so impacted. It's clear that it was so impacted by the culture they had there. And I think he's going to be better than people realized. He was really good with the Clippers, but only in like 20 games. And I think he's going to be better than people realized here on the Suns. And just having the ability to slot him in if Devin Booker or Bradley Beal are out and you know, the offense barely misses a beat. It's different, obviously, but his skill set is so huge.
Yeah, it's slightly different. I mean, he can't make advanced reads the way that either of those two guys can with the ball in his hands, but he can still get to the rim. We've talked about that plenty. Like, it's not just the launching 27, 28-foot shots for him. It's the fact that he is so consistently at his age attacking is the thing that like gets my jaw to drop when we talk about Eric Gordon. And then like he'll be asked about it in pressers or post-game conferences or whatever by the media, and he's like, yeah, that's always what I've done. That's how true. He's been a well-rounded offensive player and forever, and feels that, I don't know whether it was maybe the fact that he was playing in that Morey ball system for a while, or where like Houston, I feel like so much of the headlines went towards how many threes they were jacking up, but maybe he feels like that isn't a properly respected part of his game. But in this system, it's going to be respected, because after Bradley Beal, who is the number one driver on this team, maybe Booker is still number two, but Eric Gordon's probably number three. He's going to have a whole lot of opportunities to create some rim gravity for us.
I think his offense is going to just be incredible. The combination of the space that the Suns players create with his ability to attack closeouts if they actually play up on him just makes it really easy. He seems to be he already has chemistry with like Drew Eubanks. You can see that already. He's going to find him for some easy dunks, and like I said, if he slots in to the starting lineup at any point, like you can see him, you know, scoring 20 to 25 points on any random night, just because he's in there and he's playing enough minutes and he's expected to shoot when he gets the ball. And also defensively, and I said this before he was signed, he's not a bad defender. I think people think of him as a bad defender, and maybe it's just people out there trying to find reasons to hate on the Suns, and it's not real analysis. But there is a narrative out there that people think he's a bad defender. He's not insanely fast defensively, moving his feet, but he's so strong and he's so smart, it makes up for a lot of that. Is he going to be like a high-level defensive player? No, but he's not going to be bad. And I think there's an advantage to just not playing bad players defensively, just like ever, really. Like you can create a lineup here where there's no really bad defenders. You know, there's players that are going to be targeted or whatever, but none of them are terrible.
There's only a couple on the entire roster, honestly, who I think you could honestly call.
And I don't know how much longer they're going to be
bad
on the
defenders.
Quiet.
We're not there. We're going to get there. You can get your takes off about, I know who you're talking about, in about 40 more minutes, okay? But we are not there yet. Eric Gordon is terrible. He's not one of those guys. He's not one of those guys that you just pick on over and over again. And again, Chris Paul, I'm sorry, like, if I keep picking on Chris Paul, but I just keep thinking about how different this team looks now that we don't have Chris Paul anymore. And it's like, they're going to turn the ball over more. Yes. But if that's the one thing, the one concession that you made, and in return you get more length across the board where none of your guys get picked on defensively, and you shoot more threes, and your pace is faster, and you get to the free throw line more. And for all of that, you've sacrificed, you turn the ball over a little bit more, but like that's kind of the difference between the Suns roster right now versus last year, and that's a great trade. If the only thing we sacrificed is a little bit of ball security.
And I'm not even convinced. I don't know. It's going to be. There's no guy like Chris Paul.
They're going to turn the
There's
ball over
no guy like
more.
Chris Paul.
That's the one concession you got to make.
Well, because of Bulls, 6 turnovers per
No,
36.
not just because of Bulls, 6 turnovers, because of a lot of these guys, Mike. But it's okay. It's okay. I'm saying it's okay because of everything else.
You're right. No, I agree. I think the Warriors were a good example of a team like that. There was a chaos to their offense, the Warriors, that made it harder to guard them, and that meant that there was more turnovers than an average team like them, and I think the Suns can look at that as an example. But let me just say, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Eric Gordon, Bradley Beal, Grayson Allen, Yusuf Nurkic, Josh Okogie. Those are 7 players that we've talked about already. And, we still have, I think, some guys that are really interesting that can still play minutes. And I think you're right about finding, there's one player we know for sure is going to get minutes, Drew Eubanks. And we can talk about him next because we know he's going to play because Yusuf Nurkic is probably going to play 28 minutes a game, 29 minutes a game is what I expect. So Drew Eubanks will be the guy making up the majority of the rest of those minutes. And I think Drew Eubanks is a player who's played in the preseason that you and I haven't talked about a ton, even online, who has just been solid. He's been a good player so far. I think he's had some pretty spectacular blocks. And I think when he played with the starters in the last game, made some nice reads in the short roll, even a nice pass to a cutter, similar to what Nurkic has done. And he's just been a solid player. I think there's going to be times in the regular season where we're going to have chances to talk about him more. Depending on how teams play defense against the Suns, he'll probably have some better games at times. But, I think Drew Eubanks moves his feet much better than Nurkic in drop defenses, and he's probably going to play more of a drop defense.
Uh-huh.
And I think he's been solid, but I don't know if you have anything else to add about him.
How about this? So I'm going off the per 36 stats that you were using before too,
here
just
we
because
go.
it makes the most sense to put everyone on an even playing field right now, right? So 17 guys have played for the Suns, have suited up here in preseason. Eubanks is 16th. He's 16th in field goal attempts per 36, only 5.1, but he's 3rd in free throw attempts per 36.
And by the way,
at 10.
basically tied for second.
Basically, with Yusuf.
Yeah.
Which is to say he's not an offensive focal point for them whatsoever. Like with Nurk, the idea is you get a little bit of, I don't know, he can work a mismatch or you can throw it to him in the post and hope that
he gets fouls in the post. Yeah.
Right. Eubanks is going to be a pure... He appears to be the 5th offensive option in any lineup that he appears in right now. They're not giving him the ball and letting him cook. But
fouls.
That's not stopping him from finding a way to get to the free throw line somehow, off of whether it's off an offensive rebound or if he just catches the ball like as the 5th guy to touch the ball on offense and he just throws a little up and under and works his way to the line. It's remarkable.
I honestly think he's going to get a lot of fouls just by being annoying. Like fighting for rebounds, and then people are going to, swipe at him to try and take it, and boxing out in a way where people are going to jump over him or push on him and stuff like that. And that's where a lot of his fouls have come from. Now, I think there's an advantage in the foul, like when we're looking at the free throw attempts here, just knowing that they played a bunch of young players in Portland and that impacted these foul rates, and it'll be interesting to see how it translates against better teams like the Warriors in the first game of the season coming up. But still, I think it's clear that some of it is effort related and style related.
Yeah. And
Eubanks got fouled a lot in the preseason.
So that's 8 guys now. That was our 8th guy.
Yeah, I think that's exactly where I was going to go. Who are the other 2 guys if we're talking about a 10-man rotation?
I mean, there's still 3 guys. There's still 4 guys even to me who are kind of on the outside looking in. You could make a compelling case for the 4th. We've already talked about 8.
There are 2, in my opinion, that rose above the other players.
There are 2 who are going to play, but I really think you could make a case for 3 or 4. So where do you want to start? Should we bum the people out a little bit first and talk about Keita Bates-Diop?
Sure, that's fine.
I think just because, I think it's important to have some balance in these podcasts. I think if there's a guy, we talk about a lot of these guys were risers. Grayson Allen, for instance, great example of a riser, played above expectations. I think if there's one story of a guy who played below expectations.
Well, not mine.
Really?
I tried to warn people a little bit about Keita.
All right, you go first. What's your deal with Keita Bates-Diop?
Well, let me say this. I actually thought he was pretty good in the last Portland game. So, but I think what's hard with somebody like Keita Bates-Diop is that he was so pushed outside of the rotation in the first 3 games that he was playing with a bunch of bums. And I think his skill set, what's he going to do when he's playing with a bunch of guys who are not creating shots for him?
Yeah,
his skill set is kind of wasted.
He was
in those scenarios.
And I appreciated the fact that he continued to try and
he's
attack
attacking
closeouts
exactly. He's attacking his man over and over and over again. And then the defense is just converging on him because he's playing with Saban Lee, and Azubuike. And it's like, what is he going to do to create space?
Saban Lee, by the way, who I guess we'll get to at some point too, because we have to. But would you believe that Saban Lee has logged the most minutes out of any Sun in preseason here through 4 games?
I would believe that.
It's Saban Lee with 90 minutes, which is
played every game. There's only
remarkable.
A few guys who have played every game. But Keita Bates-Diop, you put him with the starters, or at least some of the starters, for a bit in this last Portland game, and it's like, okay, you can start to see the utility of him getting offensive rebounds, attacking guys in mismatches where there actually is space to be created, and then getting wide open threes, which he could get when he plays with stars, which he can't get when he plays with Bol and Saban Lee. Keita Bates-Diop, I think the thing I was trying to tell people is not to get overly excited about his defense because he looks like a defender. In the right matchups, I think he is a good defender. Don't think that he can chase around smaller players regularly just because he has long arms. It's just not how he's built.
Yeah.
So, and I think this preseason has played that out pretty obviously. But in the right lineups, I think he'll work fine. And if there are times when there are guys who are injured, like I do think he's a little bit out of the rotation right now, but there are times when guys are injured where he's going to get more play, and I think he will be fine if you put him in the right lineups. And I think this preseason, if you're bummed out by him, I think he can be better than he was in this preseason. And that last Portland game showed that.
He shot 33% here from the field in 83 preseason minutes, and obviously that's not going to continue. You play him with better players. You give him some more opportunities to, I think, cut. First of all, we haven't seen enough of the cutting. I think we've seen some good examples of cutting from other guys who we'll get to, but not so much from Bates-Diop. The post game we have seen a little bit from him too. We have seen him attack a couple of guys in the post when he has a small.
You can't put a tiny guy on him. You can't.
It's a huge.
You have to put some size on him
for sure. A huge asset, and you can consider the utility of that if you're swapping out, say, Grayson Allen or Josh Okogie in some lineups for Keita as the 5th guy. You can see the utility of that, but to your point, on the other end, defense, we have not seen, if you're hoping that he's Mikal Bridges, but on a $1 million budget, that's just kind of doesn't exist, right?
Right.
So I guess maybe we
that's
oversold
Jordan
it
Goodwin.
a little bit.
Yeah.
That's Jordan Goodwin. Okay, so let's contrast.
Hold on. Let's say, okay, yeah, we can go to Jordan Goodwin.
Let's go to Jordan Goodwin,
okay.
who is the anti-Keita Bates-Diop in that he's just been 100% fun. He rules.
He's a psycho. The Suns were up by like 23 points. It was the middle of the third quarter, and he was just diving on the floor for loose balls. Here's a stat we're looking at per 36. I know you see this one. 8.2 steals per 36 minutes for Jordan Goodwin so far, because I think he had 6 or whatever in the last game, which he played the most in. Only played 2 games so far, I think both against Portland because he was injured. And he just is awesome. He's all effort, and he's bigger than like the guys that we know who are Okogie and like Javon Carter, if we want to compare him to guys in the past. He's just bigger and stronger and taller and longer arms,
I mean, for long-time listeners of this podcast, people who follow this podcast for like 5 years now, would know that I used to be back in the day, Shaq Harrison, that was my boy. And Jordan Goodwin is kind of the Pokemon final evolution, I feel like, of a Shaq Harrison, in that he's got all of the hustle. He's got the wingspan. Shaq had a really good wingspan too. But he can also kind of shoot and kind of run an offense and kind of finish. He can. He actually can. And to what extent are we really expecting him to do those things?
No,
within
you're right.
Within reason. But admit it, the past couple of days where we've seen him appear because there were a couple games that he missed, he is running the offense in some minutes.
Well, I think if you're in a scenario where the Suns are up 20 and you're like, okay, we got to close out this game, let's not put the starters back in, you're going to feel pretty good when you put Jordan Goodwin in there with other guys that can actually score. Like maybe if you're putting the full third stringer guys, like, the guys. I don't want to say him by name yet, but you'll feel pretty good if it's Jordan Goodwin out there running the offense because the defense is going to be pretty insane, and he makes plays. He makes plays defensively, and we talked about the Marley Hustle Award. With Max,
they were talking about it on the broadcast too. That a coach,
it might be Goodwin, right? It's nice to have that competition. Those two guys are absolutely going to be competing for.
There's going to be voter fatigue for Okogie, so he has to come in hot, and it kind of feels like it's Goodwin's award to win right now. Let me throw a stat at you. Actually, I'm going to make you play a guessing game because we try and do this. Feels like maybe once a week now. So Goodwin had 6 steals, in 20 minutes.
So crazy.
Going back to 2010, so the past 13 years, past close to a decade and a half, there have been only 9 total games, not 9 players, but 9 total games where a Suns player in the regular season, that is, has logged at least 6 steals. That's how rare this is. It's only happened
so
9
times. It could even be more than 20 minutes is what you're saying.
Yes. In fact, in every other instance where it's happened since 2010, it has been in more than 20 minutes. To do this in 20 minutes is a very rare feat. Do you want to take a guess? Let me see. First of all, let me see how many players are total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, 7 players, 7 Suns since 2010.
So somebody's done it more than once. I'm going to guess the guy who's done it more than once first. Chris Paul.
Chris Paul has done it once. He is on the list.
Okay, he's done it once. Okay.
You should start with just the obvious names.
Josh Okogie.
Josh Okogie has not done it.
Interesting.
You should start with guys who are emblematic of guys who have played the most
Mikal
minutes. Mikal Bridges. He did it twice.
Okay. PJ Tucker, is he on there?
PJ Tucker's on there. He did it once.
Okay. DeAnthony Melton?
No, DeAnthony Melton did not do it.
I mentioned DeAnthony Melton because I think he's the closest comparison that I have to Jordan Goodwin.
There's a couple that you're just not going to get at the end here. But so you've got Mikal Bridges.
Bledsoe?
No, not Bledsoe. That's a really good guess, though. Mikal Bridges, Chris Paul, PJ Tucker. One really obvious one. I mean, just who's the best Sun ever?
Steve Nash?
No, the other best Sun ever.
Charles Barkley? Devin Booker?
Devin Booker has done this twice.
Devin Booker has done that?
God.
I would have never guessed that.
Devin Booker has 2 games with 6+ steals.
Okay, that makes sense, actually.
All right, you've got 3 players left. You want me to give you hints?
Yeah.
It was Chris Paul before Chris Paul. Who was the bridge point guard that got
Ricky
us
Rubio.
to Ricky Rubio.
Makes sense.
He did it once. The last 2 you'll never get.
Okay.
I'll just get. Do you want me to just give it to you?
Yeah, you can.
Brandon Knight.
I would have guessed Brandon Knight, actually.
Really? And
he's just one of those guys that every once in a while had a good game.
That's true. He did have a good game like once every 15 games.
Yeah.
And would make you forget that he was actually Brandon Knight and you were very sad to be watching him.
Exactly.
And Vince Carter is the last
one.
Oh,
no. I would have never ever guessed that.
In the 2010-11 season. I actually should have checked to see if that was his career high for steals because Vince Carter, I feel like, didn't have that reputation to begin with.
I don't know how that happened. Was he wearing the other team's jersey by accident?
I have no idea. That was a weird era of Suns basketball. But every single one of those guys that we just mentioned, when they got 6+ steals, they did it in at least 30 minutes.
Right.
Jordan Goodwin just did it in 20 in his third, fourth appearance.
I mean, and look, he won't play 20 minutes very often.
I mean, I kind of hope he does.
Sometimes he will, yeah.
Maybe he will.
I mean, sometimes he will. I think that there has to be a willingness to play really small with the bench if you're playing Jordan Goodwin, because if they do anything like they did in the last game, you're starting the second quarter with both Beal and KD, and now what? Do you have Eric Gordon and Grayson Allen too? That's 4 players already. And how do you find minutes for Jordan Goodwin in that scenario? It's really tough. And by the way, we haven't even covered him. You got to play Yuta.
Yeah, well, let's talk about Yuta now.
Yuta is so good. man. Like, the thing I was really impressed by with Yuta, I know that people want him to shoot 45% from three, and he's shot 35% so far in the preseason. And okay, whatever. We'll talk about how that can change. It's a shooter. Like, you can't take a small sample size for a shooter. You have to look at it in larger sample sizes. But he moves around to all the right places. He cuts. He understands spacing. He understands passing lanes. He's extremely smart defensively. I think he will be a target in a lot of lineups defensively. But one of the things that's impacted his stats is in the games where the starters are done, they're playing bench guys, and the offense totally falls apart with these bench guys on it because there's no prime offensive player. Vogel was putting Yuta in those lineups, and then all of a sudden, the offense worked again. Like, he has that large of an impact on the game with his shooting and his movement.
Which game was it? Was it the Denver game or the first Portland game where we were letting them back in and Vogel had to check Yuta back in the game? Yeah, in the first Portland game, just to be like, all right, Yuta, save us.
He checked him back in, the Suns went up by 10 again, and then he checked him out, and then it went to overtime. He had that big of an impact on the offense in those minutes, and I think that's impacting some of his stats as well, where he's all of a sudden the best offensive player on the court, which is never going to happen in the regular season unless the Suns are very injured. And, I find him to be an incredibly smart player who's tall and can shoot, and I think you have to find minutes. I mean, he's basically number one power forward off the bench at this point, and you have to find minutes for him.
You do, but the battle between him and Keita is going to be pretty intense throughout the season.
Which is great, right?
It is
for
great.
The Suns. It's a good situation to have them in because they have two guys that desperately want minutes, and both of them, I think, are fighting for more than a minimum contract next year if they can get it because they have player options. And look, this is a championship level team, hopefully, and it's good to have that kind of competition. I think based on preseason, but also in my opinion, I thought this even before preseason. I think Yuta's in the lead a little bit there, and I think he's just such a tool offensively when you have the lineups the Suns have, to have a guy who, one, shoots a lot of threes, but two, shoots them in like a split second. They come off his hands within like a second. They're so fast. But also, last thing is just the way he could move off movement and catch and shoot. I'm not sure what those percentages are going to look like halfway through the season, if they're 30% or if they're 40%. But I know the corners are going to be good, and that matters for him. And if he can continue to shoot really well off of movement, it's a weapon, man. If you have a pick and roll on one side with Yuta coming off a pin down on the other, that's just crazy. Mm-hmm. It's hard to defend that, especially if the two guys screening for each other are Yuta and Eric Gordon. When Yuta has the athleticism to get to the rim and dunk on cuts, it's a weapon. I'm excited to watch him play.
That's 11 guys.
Yeah.
So basically confirming there that there's going to be a somewhat exciting player who's not going to be in the initial rotation. Huh?
It's Metu. It's got to be Metu. Right?
No. Metu's the next guy, and I'm excited to talk about Metu. I do think he's on the outside looking in for sure, but just between Yuta, Bates Diop, and Goodwin, if we're assuming 10-man rotation to start the season, one of those three guys that we've already talked about is not seeing the regular rotation. Right now, I think it might be Bates Diop.
And I think there's a world where Metu is at the top of that list. I'm not.
Yeah, I think
like this. If he shot 41% from three in preseason, which who knows if that's sustainable. A lot of them were in transition where he was running into it. But if it is sustainable, he's got a lot of other skills.
He's really fun. He's been the biggest surprise. I know we've talked about Grayson Allen, we've talked about Jordan Goodwin, like guys who have been rising in the charts in general. But the biggest surprise of the preseason for me is Chimezie Metu, who I think you'll agree with me here was an afterthought for both of us.
I didn't get it. I didn't understand it.
Yeah. Do you get it now? Because it's
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
First of all, I'll say he's played 79 minutes through 4 games. Yeah. That's a lot. But until the most recent game against Portland, most of those minutes, and this was because, they were playing Bol sometimes, they were playing Udoka sometimes, most of those minutes were coming as a power forward. And as a power forward, I think he has skills. I think he has better ball skills than your average power forward. I think he's made some decent reads. He's gotten some assists. He's obviously shot the ball well, as you pointed out, over 40% from deep. But it wasn't until this most recent game that we really got a good look at him at center. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, okay, I get it. Because he's smaller than the other two centers. But if Chimezie Metu is going to be your let's switch everything option, as it seems he's gonna be, he came into that game against Portland and immediately they started switching
or blitzing. Yeah,
he
played high.
He played high and aggressive in all of his pick and roll coverages, and they seemed content, like in a way that they definitely weren't. They want to protect Eubanks. They want to protect Nurkic. Maybe trust their instincts to a certain extent. Like we saw some of the aggressive coverages with Nurkic where they trust his instincts to maybe stick a hand out and get his hand on the ball. But they don't want to leave him on an island. With Chimezie, they were like, okay, we trust you. Go and guard a guard. And he was not bad.
No, he's not.
And
he's super athletic, and it's almost an advantage for him that he's not huge.
We've seen it. Obviously, last year, like we saw some small ball 5 stuff with, like, we always talk about the couple of small ball 5 minutes that Ish Wainwright played where, like, it saved games last year. Like, there were games that the Suns won, that one Spurs game that we always talk about because Ish Wainwright played the 5. But the difference with Chimezie, if he's going to be that guy who's uber athletic and is switching out everything on defense, but on offense, he still carries a traditional rim runner's gravity. You can still put him in that traditional rim runner role and have him be a lob threat, which is something that if you just stick Ish Wainwright at the 5 or Keita Bates-Diop with all of his length at the 5 or some of these other guys at the 5, they just have no offensive role. And it's kind of like all you can do with them is maybe put them in the corner and pray that they can hit an open 3 or stick them in a dunker spot, but even there it's an awkward fit. Metu actually makes sense at both power forward and center right now in a way that I didn't think he would. And so there's
KD really helps with that because of what KD can do offensively, which is everything. So you put somebody like Metu next to him in those small ball lineups, and because KD doesn't have to be the guy that's screening and rolling, it's just really nice to have that option. And you're right, he might be the reason Ish isn't on the team anymore.
It feels like there's a role here for him that I mean, probably, like, you never hope for this. Probably the way that he works himself into the rotation is someone else needs to get injured. Even if it's just like minor injuries or whatever.
Yeah.
It happens.
Guys miss 10 games here and there. That type of thing happens.
Right, because he's definitely behind KD, Yuta, Bates-Diop at power forward, and he's definitely behind Yusuf Eubanks at center. And that's just a lot.
Are you sure he's behind Bates-Diop right now?
Well, that's an interesting question.
It's probably close.
It's close.
Probably close.
I mean, I certainly liked him more than Bates-Diop.
They've played basically the same amount of minutes,
but he's not the same seasoned. He doesn't have the seasoning that Bates-Diop has quite.
One thing I'll say is I love the confidence that Vogel has instilled in these guys to launch threes. Metu is not afraid to shoot those threes. He's launching them. Basically, the majority of his field goal attempts, I guess slightly under that, have been threes, and he's just not afraid to get out there and shoot them. And that includes sprinting in transition up to the 3-point line, catching it and shooting it as soon as he gets his hands on the ball. And look, I don't know how much of how I've been impressed with him has been impacted by the fact that he's shooting 40%, or what is he shooting?
He has to. No.
He
has to. Like, let's be clear. If that number was 25-30%, which is closer to what his career number is,
and it might be who he is for real,
and it might be who he is for real, then you can't play him at power forward, and that suddenly it becomes a lot more difficult. So much of the value is that Chimezie is playable at center and interesting in some situations, but he doesn't work as a complete package if he can't do both. So the 3-point shot needs to be consistent. It doesn't have to be 40%, but it needs to be 35%.
And, I think the thing that was like really got my eyebrows raised a little bit with Metu is the Suns have been running this like secondary action on these plays. If the first action doesn't work and they're running a dribble handoff, the big will dribble towards the corner as if the guard is going to come flying around a DHO. They'll fake that DHO and then cut to the rim. And both Eubanks and Nurkic have made the pass over the top to guys to get that bucket at the rim from that fake cut. Metu who has run this play once as well, made a bounce pass between defenders off the dribble directly to Yuta, cutting towards the rim in a way that I was like, whoa, did not expect that he had that in him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, admittedly, I think the standards that we have for bigs and passing on this team have been low. I mean, it's true. They've been low because Ayton could not make even the over-the-top pass.
Ayton couldn't do it, but we've seen so many other guys.
Saric could.
Saric and Kaminsky and Jock.
Kaminsky was good.
Yeah, Baines a little bit. I mean, we've seen
not really.
We've seen so many other.
Baines couldn't really do it.
So many backups who have
though.
come in and have done it that I think we had some expectations.
It's just nice to see that.
I just assumed that this was them taking a chance on an athlete, that this was a quintessential end of bench signing for a guy who is athletic. Clearly, he has more skill than that, and I think that's kind of the bottom line with this conversation about Chimezie Metu.
Yeah, they wanted a guy who could play forward and center. That's kind of big, and they have a guy who could potentially do that, and I see the vision now, and I hope he continues to develop. We're well over an hour already on this one.
We can start to rapid fire now.
Let's say
we're
this.
into third
Saban Lee, Azubuike, two-way guys, not a lot of analysis there.
Well, the only thing...
I hope they don't play very much.
The only thing to say is that some people online who didn't necessarily know the complexities of the rules would maybe choose to cut those guys. There's no reason to cut those guys. They're two-way contracts.
Should keep them because they both... I see why they're two-way guys. They both have some kind of NBA level skill that you
Azubuike had a couple of awesome blocks last night. I mean, he's really just...
Not sure he can do much else, though.
I would describe his defensive strategy as large and in charge. I mean,
he's huge.
He kind of has a contract for being big, and that's it. So, he's flat-footed, and he might find himself out of position a lot. But when he is in the vicinity of the ball, if he gets his fingertips on it, he's swatting that shit into the 8th row, which is really fun. He'll play a little bit. He's definitely not my favorite to be, one of the top 3 in the Suns' center depth chart.
There's 4 more guys currently rostered. The Suns have to cut 2 of them. One of them they won't, because that's Nasir Little, who just signed a 4-year deal. Was Nasir Little good in preseason?
I think
no. Not really.
Okay, was that a rhetorical question, or you wanted to answer it yourself?
I mean, feel free.
I
don't think he was.
I think he was bad, but no. Actually, I think he was a little disappointing, but got a little bit of a bad rap too.
I think there's a reason to develop to put time into him more than anyone else in this last group of 4.
I will say
he's 23.
They started him in the first game against Portland, which I thought was really interesting. I kind of thought maybe that's just giving the guy a chance against his old team to make a statement. But I thought it was an interesting decision from Vogel, even in preseason, to give him minutes with starters, with Book and KD. And he
was guarding guys.
Yes.
In that lineup. He was, it was either... Well, I think it was mostly Simons that he was guarding.
So I think the issue with Nasir is he has an injury history. It's been talked about on the broadcast. It's been talked about on this podcast a little bit, I think. And I think it is going to limit his mobility a little bit when we talk about him as a primary defender. He's not in the Okogie, Jordan Goodwin tier. Maybe not even in the Bates Diop tier. I'm not sure. He's probably in the Bates Diop tier. Actually, Bates Diop was nothing special.
Well, I mean, Nasir can guard guards.
Yeah,
and he may not be great at it, but if in a pinch you need a guy to come in and guard a point guard, that's probably the guy. And he's not being cut. He's going to be on the team.
He's not being cut because, as you said, he has that long contract and they don't want to waste that money. The difficult thing is Nasir he was drafted pretty high a few years ago by Portland because he was an athlete, but he was a smart athlete. And now that a little bit of that athleticism has maybe gone away due to the injury history, just a little bit, he still has a lot of juice, but it's he doesn't have a bankable skill anymore. So you look at him on offense, he's a mediocre three-point shooter. He had a couple of maybe only one pull-up jumper in the mid-range when he was kind of playing with all those other garbage players and just had to create something out of nothing, but not a lot there. Not really
weird
anything.
Release. Weird shot release.
Not a ton to write home about in terms of offensive rebounding or any of that. I think the one thing where he really excels, actually, he's a smart cutter. And I think the more he gets to play with good players, if that ever happens, the more that will show. And maybe we'll be able to clip some of it out. Like there were some good examples of him cutting where he didn't get the ball because he was just playing with much better players. But the cut still does something on offense. Like it still lends a certain amount of gravity to the court.
If you were just judging who to cut based on preseason alone, I think Nasir and Keon Johnson would probably be cut. But
I wouldn't necessarily say that. I don't think Nasir was that bad.
Okay,
I think
what I'll say.
I think he was bad in preseason, but I don't think he would be cut on performance alone.
I think it's totally worth it to put the development time into him and see if he can become anything more than what he is right now. And I also think he's probably one of the trade assets that if a team that was trying to be good maybe pivots halfway through the season and they want to put some time into a young player, the Suns have that guy. They can try to get, a minimum contract veteran on the team if they want to replace him at some point. So he might be a trade asset, but I think it's worth it to try and figure it out. He's athletic. He has really long arms. Definitely looks like an NBA player out there at times, and he's not going to be cut. So we can move on because I think this is where the conversation gets a little interesting. We got Keon Johnson, we got Bol, and then we got the two guys who are currently not playing, which is Ish Wainwright and Damian Lee.
Ish Wainwright, a short-term injury versus Damian Lee, a long-term injury. We anticipated him being out, I don't know, months.
And you and I think they're going to keep him as of right now.
Yeah,
right?
as of right now, because I think he has a legitimate veteran impact on this team, and he's a good locker room voice. Now, maybe you could kind of say that Ish is a chemistry/vibes guy too. You could make that argument for Ish Wainwright, and we just didn't get to see him play.
And maybe Keon Johnson and Bol are super chill in the locker room as well. But I think Damian Lee, who's been on a championship team, is going to be kept just for that locker room savvy, and I think teams need guys like that. And he's friends. Look, the reality is he's friends with KD and Devin Booker. So we could just end it there.
Like we also forget he's also like decent at basketball. I mean, if
he was great last season.
He was
in
really
the regular
good.
season. He was genuinely great.
Yeah.
Exceeded what he was paid to do on the Suns. So we're talking about, I think, cutting 2 out of Keon Johnson, Bol, and Ish Wainwright. And I'm going to be honest, Keon Johnson had a very unmemorable preseason for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Keon Johnson is the type of guy where if you could cut him and then convert him somehow to a 2-way and try to put some development time into him that way, that would be kind of ideal. And you could say, okay, now you have to decide between Ish Wainwright and Bol. Because I think Keon Johnson's going to be cut, right?
I think so too. I think he was kind of, I hate to say it, but goner as soon as the trade was announced.
Yeah.
And we realized that we were getting back more names than we were giving up.
Super athletic, but we never even saw that in preseason, really, right?
Yeah. And
lots of turnovers from him.
just didn't shoot the ball well either. So, I mean, he's so young. This is why it's difficult. He's a 21-year-old kid still. He's like younger than Toumani Camara if the Suns had kept Toumani Camara. But just not the right fit for what a championship contending team's looking for right now.
If he
needs to ride it out.
The Suns have 3 2-way spots this year. They only had 2 in the previous years. And if he ends up on that third 2-way spot, I wouldn't be entirely surprised.
Yeah.
So Bol, we can talk about him now. And Ish Wainwright, Bol, they might keep him just to sell those jerseys because the crowd is super
loves
into
him.
Bol, man. And he was bad in preseason. He was really bad.
So
basically the entire time he played. I mean, the dude's highest rate of any stat he has is probably turnovers at this point.
No,
so.
he has 10
rebounds.
10
rebounds.
rebounds and 7 turnovers.
Yeah.
2 assists for the record. This is where, so I was bringing up the plus-minus stats before. So technically, Saban Lee has the worst plus-minus of any Sun in preseason at minus 49. However, Saban Lee played 90 minutes.
And Saban Lee is also not actually on the team.
But also,
a 2-way player.
But also just hear this, Saban Lee played 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Bol was not far behind. He was a minus 44, so not far behind where Saban Lee was. The difference was Bol played 41 minutes. Yeah. He played less than half the time of Saban Lee in preseason, and his plus-minus was almost as bad. Bol had a rough go of it.
He can't keep up with guys at the perimeter. He's often late on help rotations at the rim. He's a good rebounder. As soon as he tries to dribble, if a defender's up in his space, they're going to take the ball directly from him. He's not a great passer. He can barely shoot outside. And there's just no role for him defensively on this team. And here's the thing. Having said all that, I wouldn't be entirely mad that they kept him. Maybe they can see if they can find a way to develop him. He's still very young. I still think, and I thought this before he was signed on the team, I don't see a role for him on a great team, any great team in the NBA at this point. I think he's the perfect kind of player that you can have on a bad team and really try to figure out if you can develop him later. And maybe they'll hold on to him until they can trade 2-for-1 with Nasir Little and Bol Bol and try to get a veteran at that point, and that might be enough of a reason to hold on to him. But I don't think he did a lot in preseason to convince you if you're on the fence in any way. And if you're just somebody who likes to watch Bol Bol play because he might only play when the Suns are up by 20 or 25 in the fourth quarter, I think that's fair too. I think that could be really fun. I think that we predicted
way more of a fun victory cigar than Ish Wainwright. No
100%.
offense to Ish Wainwright.
100%.
And I really do feel bad if they end up cutting Ish Wainwright because he's been with the team for a little while now. He's so gracious in all of his interactions with the fans. He
has
loves
improved
going,
a lot.
He has improved too, but he loves going to fan events. He loves showing out for the Phoenix community, signing all sorts of autographs, and just like maybe he does some of that because he feels that he has to justify his presence on the roster, to be entirely honest. I don't know. But I would feel bad if a guy like that who has been so just so likable, so affable in his time with the Suns, if a guy like that ends up being cut. But Bol is just, he's more fun to watch.
If they cut Bol, you wouldn't be surprised, right?
I wouldn't be surprised. I will still say,
people will be mad.
Yesterday,
people don't like Ish Wainwright, man. I don't know why.
I don't know if that many people would be mad. I think way more casual viewership will be brought in through being able to watch Bol Bol. And also, we've survived recessions before. There will be recessions in the future. Yesterday was Black Monday with Bol Bol stock.
Yeah.
But some of us are still trying to hold.
Yeah. Okay.
There's still a reason to hold.
Yeah. And I mean, here's the reality of Bol Bol. There has been reports that he was unhappy with his role on previous teams. Will he be happy not playing at all on the Suns? Because right now he's completely out of the rotation, and there are at least 14 guys probably ahead of him. If you had to really make the rotation at this point, maybe he will. And if he is, then it's probably fine to keep him. If he's not, if he's completely unhappy, you just cut him. And you can do that later too. You don't have to do it now, or you can trade him for a second round pick or whatever. So, if they keep him, fine. If they don't, fine. I think we're talking about the difference between Ish Wainwright and Bol Bol. I'll honestly say when Ish Wainwright is checked into some games to help you in last season, he did. He helped the Suns. And I don't see really a scenario where Bol Bol is the difference, even winning one game in the regular season, to be 100% honest. And as if he's just there as a victory cigar, fine. But Ish Wainwright did help the Suns win a few games last year, and a few games is more than nothing. So we'll see what they end up doing. It's probably between those two guys, and I don't think this is an important enough decision to be upset by it either way, although I would feel bad for Ish Wainwright, who is just sort of on the fringes of the NBA. But so is Bol Bol at this point. Any other thoughts on that?
Are you still in the mindset of cut all three and sign Bismack Biyombo instead?
I would absolutely do that.
That's a joke you
100%. No, I'm not. That's not a joke. If you cut Keon Johnson, you cut Bol Bol, and you cut
Ish Wainwright,
and you sign Bismack Biyombo because now you have Yusuf Nurkic, who has not played a full season in years, I would not be mad about that because I think Bismack Biyombo in a system with Frank Vogel, I think Frank Vogel will love him. And the other thing is I find it odd that Bismack Biyombo's not signed at all. Odd in a way where I wonder if he's waiting to see what plays out for the Suns.
That's possible. It's also possible other stuff is going on behind the scenes with him that we don't know about.
Very true.
Biz is old. He played really well last year, in his role, but
he'd be third string.
Yeah,
where he should be. You know,
right.
That's where he should be at this point. And he would probably actually be the third string, unlike with Monty, who could not decide, even though Jock Landale was clearly better.
I don't know, man. Biz shot 36% from the free throw line last year. I think there's a chance that Bol Bol eclipses that as a 3-point
He'll
shooter.
be better at one. He'll be better at one thing. That's for sure. Yeah, I think I could agree.
And he'll put more
look,
butts in
his
seats.
shot is great. He does have a good looking shot, and it's impossible to block. But yeah, it's just a fascinating thing with Bol Bol because he's not an unskilled player. He has a bunch of skills.
I think
It's just none of it is ever put together in a way that makes him impactful on the court.
I think we should keep him. And so cut the other two, but I think we should
I'm
keep
not
him.
against it.
And then I think the first time we play San Antonio, we should start him against Wemby just to like put that debate to rest. Just like have him match minutes with Victor Wembanyama. So if Wemby plays 36 minutes that game, Bol
He'll foul out.
Bol is guarding him every single minute of that.
I mean, I don't hate it. It would be fun to watch at the very least. All right, anything else that you want to cover from preseason? We talked about who should start. We talked about who could potentially be cut. We talked about a little bit on DeAndre Ayton too. I don't know if you want to talk about him anymore. We don't have to, but anything else?
I'm good on that. Thanks for bringing it up again, though. Yeah.
We made our first donation to
yes,
a charity because of our merch drop, which we did drop a few weeks ago, which is ethicalhoops.com. If you haven't checked it out, go to that site, ethicalhoops.com. It'll redirect you directly to our store. And anyone who bought our Ethical Hoops merchandise, whether it be shirt, sweater, or coffee mug, helped us to donate to Feed Phoenix, which is a local Phoenix charity that helps feed people who are in need. And we made that donation this week for our first time after getting paid from those shirts. So we appreciate everyone who allowed us to do that. And we thank you for supporting us. And if anyone else would like to check those out, you can check it out, ethicalhoops.com. And we'll be back. We're going to record our next Patreon episode a little bit later this week so that we can talk about the final preseason game. And if you want to listen to that one, patreon.com/thetimeline. Now's a good time to join if you've ever been thinking about joining, because the season's right around the corner and you'll get an extra episode every week for just $6 a month. And you can join our Discord at any tier, but for $3 a month, if you just want to join the Discord, you can. Have a lot of good conversations about the Suns on that Discord. And then next week, basically a week from today probably, or I mean less than a week from today, we'll have our season preview out where we can actually preview the season and we'll talk about that first game. And then right around the corner, our 6th season covering the Phoenix Suns, Sam, will begin. Are you excited?
It's a week away. That's wild. We're about to start season number 6, and I can't wait. Some things change, some things stay the same from year to year, man. Kind of hitting the groove right now. I'm ready. You know what I'm ready for too? To get back into the playback swing of things. That's something
that's going to be great.
We haven't done
that's
one of those
gonna be
in a
great.
while. Other than to watch Thunderstruck with some people from the Discord, which wasn't bad. Wasn't a bad experience.
It was fun.
But getting back into just that community feel for live games should be fun too.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll be back on Friday with Patreon next weekend with our season preview.